AD, Jerusalem is burning. The smoke is so thick that soldiers can barely see the temple in front of them. Somewhere inside the chaos, a Roman legionary walks out carrying a solid gold menorah taller than his chest. Another follows with silver trumpets. Another disappears beneath the weight of sacred vessels that generations of priests believed would never leave the house of God. None of these men know it yet. Nearly 2,000 years later, people will still be asking the same question: where did it all go? History remembers wars because they decide who wins. It remembers kings because they wear the crowns. But after almost every great conquest comes another battle that rarely makes it into the history books: the race to steal everything. Not just gold. Kingdoms have stolen crowns, temples, libraries, entire cities, sometimes even the identity of another civilization. These aren't ordinary robberies. They're the moments when centuries of history disappeared in a matter of days. These are the greatest thefts of ancient civilizations. The treasures of the Second Temple. It's August 70 AD. A Roman soldier has just climbed through a breach in Jerusalem's defenses. The city has held out for months against one of the most powerful armies on earth. Now it is collapsing street by street. At the center of everything stands the Second Temple. For the Jewish people, it is far more than a building. It is the spiritual heart of an entire civilization. Its treasury holds offerings gathered across generations, gold vessels crafted for sacred rituals, silver trumpets, tables used in worship, the great seven-branched menorah made of hammered gold. For the Romans, none of that matters. To them it is treasure. General Titus gives the order. The temple is stripped. Roman soldiers carry away everything of value before flames consume what remains. Years later, when Emperor Titus celebrates his victory in Rome, he doesn't simply tell people what happened. He builds a monument. Walk beneath the Arch of Titus today, and you'll still see Roman soldiers carved into stone carrying the great menorah through the streets in triumph. It is one of history's rare moments where the thieves themselves leave behind a picture of what they stole, but then the trail goes cold. Ancient writers mention the treasure reaching Rome. After that, history becomes a puzzle. Some believe parts of it disappeared during the sack of Rome centuries later. Others think they were melted down. Legends claim they lie hidden beneath cities or buried beneath forgotten ruins. Nobody knows. The most sacred treasures of one of history's most influential civilizations simply vanish from the historical record. Sometimes the greatest mystery isn't who stole the treasure, it's where history lost it. The bronze horses of Constantinople. It's April 1204. The richest city in Christendom has been breached. Constantinople has survived sieges for centuries. Persians failed, Arabs failed, Bulgars failed. Its walls were considered almost impossible to break. The army entering the city isn't supposed to be here. They're crusaders, men who took vows to fight for Jerusalem. Instead, they are looting fellow Christians. For 3 days the city becomes one enormous treasure hunt. Churches are emptied, palaces are stripped, relics disappear by the wagon load, golden icons that took generations to create are hacked apart for their precious metal, but one theft becomes the symbol of them all. Standing above the hippodrome are 4 enormous bronze horses. Nobody knows exactly who made them. Some historians believe they date back centuries later. Either way, they are masterpieces. Each weighs hundreds of kilograms. Stealing them should be impossible. The Venetians find a way. The statues are lowered, loaded onto ships, carried across the Mediterranean. Today they still stand in Venice above St. Mark's Basilica. Nearly 800 years after they were taken, they survived the fall of empires, they survived Napoleon, they survived 2 world wars, but they never went home. The Fourth Crusade didn't simply conquer Constantinople. It robbed the greatest city in Europe so thoroughly that historians still debate whether Byzantium ever truly recovered. And if you think stealing 4 bronze horses sounds ambitious, wait until you hear about the king who decided an entire nation's identity could be carried away in a single cart. The Fourth Crusade, the day Christians looted the greatest Christian city on earth. It's April 1204. For 900 years Constantinople has been the richest city in Europe. Its churches glitter with gold mosaics. Its palaces overflow with silk from China. Its markets sell spices from India. Its walls have never been broken by force. To the medieval world, Constantinople is untouchable. Which makes what happens next almost impossible to believe. The army outside the walls isn't Muslim, it isn't Mongol, it isn't Viking, it's a Crusader army. An army wearing crosses on their chests, an army that was supposed to be marching to Jerusalem, and within days they will steal an empire. The crusade wasn't supposed to end here. The Pope had called for another expedition to reclaim the Holy Land. Thousands answered, but there was one problem: transportation. They hired Venice to build one of the largest fleets Europe had ever seen. The Venetians spent months preparing hundreds of ships. When the Crusaders finally arrived, they couldn't pay, not even close. During the largest military transport fleet in history, and realizing you don't have the money, Venice saw an opportunity. Its elderly doge Enrico Dandolo offered another deal: you can't pay your debt, so fight for us instead. The Crusades slowly stopped belonging to God and started belonging to merchants. The army spent months attacking cities that had nothing to do with Jerusalem. Then came a prince from Byzantium, Alexios Angelos. He made a promise that changed history. Help me take back my father's throne, and I'll pay you more money than you've ever seen. I'll feed your army. I'll fund your crusade. I'll even reunite the Eastern and Western churches. The Crusaders accepted. Instead of sailing toward Jerusalem, they sailed toward Constantinople. The first attack worked. Alexios became emperor. Then everything collapsed. The treasury wasn't nearly as full as he'd promised. The people hated the Latin soldiers filling their streets. Riots erupted. Buildings burned. Before long, Alexios was murdered. The Crusaders suddenly realized something terrifying: the man who owed them a fortune was dead, and nobody intended to pay. So they made a decision. If the empire wouldn't pay them, they would simply rob it. In 1204, they breached the walls. What followed shocked even medieval chroniclers. Churches were stripped of gold, monasteries emptied, libraries scattered, relics disappeared by the wagonload, horses were marched directly into cathedrals. The great earth was being looted by Christians. Nothing was spared. The famous bronze horses that once stood over Constantinople's hippodrome were ripped from their pedestals. They still stand today above St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. Entire shiploads of marble statues, icons, jewels, manuscripts and precious metals crossed the sea. Generations of Byzantine wealth simply changed addresses. Some treasures vanished forever. Others survive today in museums and churches scattered across Europe. Walking through Venice today, you're looking at pieces of Constantinople. The money was divided. Venice claimed the best ports. The Crusader nobles carved the empire into kingdoms before the fires had even gone out. Imagine burglars arguing over who gets which room before the homeowner's house has finished burning. That was the Fourth Crusade. The Byzantine Empire technically survived, but it never truly recovered. The richest city in Europe had been gutted, its economy shattered, its defenses weakened, its confidence destroyed. 2.5 centuries later, when the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II finally arrived with his cannons, Constantinople stood alone. Many historians argue that the city didn't truly fall in 1453. It began falling the day the Crusaders robbed it. One theft changed the balance of power between Europe and the Middle East for centuries. Sometimes, the greatest thing you can steal isn't gold, it's someone else's future. The Sack of Baghdad, when 8 centuries of knowledge disappeared in a week. It's February 1258. Baghdad is the jewel of the Islamic world. For over 500 years, it has been one of the richest, smartest and most sophisticated cities on earth. Astronomers map the heavens here. Doctors perform surgeries Europe won't attempt for centuries. Mathematicians develop algebra. Scholars gather books from Greece, Persia, India and China into the greatest library the medieval world has ever known. The House of Wisdom. If human knowledge had a capital, this was it. Within 1 week, much of it would disappear forever. The army approaching Baghdad belongs to Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. He has already erased kingdoms from the map. Cities that resist him cease to exist. The Abbasid Caliph still believes Baghdad's prestige will protect it. He refuses to surrender. He underestimates the Mongols. It is the last mistake he ever makes. The siege is brutally short. Mongol engineers surround the city with siege engines brought from across Asia. Walls that had protected Baghdad for centuries begin collapsing. On February 10th, the city opens its gates. The killing begins. For days, the streets become rivers of bodies. Contemporary accounts speak of hundreds of thousands dead. The exact number is impossible to know. The horror is not. Palaces are emptied. treasuries broken open, markets stripped, anything valuable is taken, anything too heavy to move is destroyed. But the greatest theft isn't measured in gold. It's measured in pages. The House of Wisdom contains manuscripts copied across centuries, works of Aristotle, Euclid, Persian astronomy, Indian mathematics, medical texts, engineering diagrams, books so rare there is only one copy in existence. Throw them into the Tigris River. So many books are dumped into the water that chroniclers claim the river runs black with ink. Whether literally true or not, the image survives because it captures something real, a civilization's memory, being washed away. Centuries to collect, only days to destroy. Historians still debate exactly how much vanished that week. Nobody can calculate the answer. You can't count books that no longer exist. You can't recover discoveries whose only copy was thrown into a river. You can't recreate conversations that ended beneath collapsing libraries. Some ideas died in Baghdad, without anyone realizing they'd been born there. The Mongols leave with wagons of treasure, gold, silver, silks, jewels. But history remembers something else. The greatest theft wasn't wealth, it was knowledge, because stolen gold can be earned again, burned libraries cannot, and for centuries afterward. The Islamic Golden Age never fully recovered its former brilliance. Sometimes, the most valuable thing an empire owns isn't inside its treasury, it's inside its books. The bronze horses that crossed an empire. It's the spring of 1204. The greatest city in Christendom has already fallen. The fires are still burning, the streets are still filled with broken statues and shattered churches. But somewhere inside Constantinople, a group of Venetian sailors has found something too valuable to leave behind. Not gold, not jewels, 4 horses, bronze horses, each one larger than a real stallion, each one worth a fortune, and moving them will become one of the boldest art thefts in history. Nobody knows exactly where the horses were made. Some historians believe ancient Greece, others argue they came from Rome. Some think they may have been cast under Alexander's successors nearly 1500 years before this moment. Wherever they came from, they ended up in Constantinople, mounted above the Hippodrome, the center of imperial life. Every emperor passed beneath them, every victory parade marched below them. For centuries, they became one of the symbols of the Byzantine Empire itself, which is exactly why Venice wanted them. The problem wasn't stealing them, the problem was physics. Bronze is unforgiving. Each horse weighs hundreds of kilograms. You don't simply pick up a masterpiece the size of a wagon, you dismantle it. Workers climbed onto the monument, they hacked the statues free. The horses were lowered piece by piece with ropes and wooden cranes. To make transportation easier, their heads were removed from their bodies. If you look closely today, the seam around each neck is still visible, a scar left by medieval thieves. Once aboard Venetian ships, the horses crossed the Adriatic, not as trophies of war, as advertisements. Venice understood something few medieval states did. Power wasn't only about armies, it was about appearance. If you could decorate your city with the treasures of older empires, people began believing your city deserved to replace them. The horses were mounted above St. Mark's Basilica, not hidden, displayed. Every visitor entering Venice saw them. Every merchant understood the message. The wealth of Constantinople now belonged to Venice. Centuries later, another conqueror walked into the city, Napoleon Bonaparte. He looked up, saw the horses, and decided they belonged somewhere else. French soldiers removed them, loaded them onto wagons, carried them across Europe, then installed them above the Arc du Carrousel in Paris. The horses had now survived 2 of history's greatest art thefts. After Napoleon fell, they crossed Europe again, back to Venice. Today, the originals sit safely inside St. Mark's Basilica. Outside, replicas face the square. Because after surviving nearly 2,000 years, people finally realized leaving priceless bronze statues exposed to weather and war wasn't the smartest idea. The strangest part, the horses outlived every empire that stole them. The Byzantines lost them, Venice lost its empire, Napoleon lost his, yet the horses remain. Sometimes history's greatest survivors aren't kings, they're the things kings steal. The Viking raid that changed Europe forever. It's June 8, 793 AD. A monastery sits quietly on a tiny island off the northeast coast of England, Lindisfarne. To Christians across Europe, this place is sacred. Pilgrims travel hundreds of miles to pray here. Its monks spend years copying books by hand. Its churches are filled with silver crosses, gold chalices, jeweled reliquaries. Almost nobody carries weapons. Why would they? Who attacks a monastery? Then dark shapes appear on the horizon, longships. At first, the monks probably assume they're merchants. The ships glide silently toward shore, low, fast, unlike anything England has ever seen. Then the strangers jump onto the beach, axes in their hands, round shields on their backs. No negotiations, no declarations of war, just violence. The Vikings move through the monastery with terrifying speed. Anything made from gold disappears. Silver altarpieces are ripped apart. Crosses are smashed apart for their metal. Decorated gospel books are thrown aside after their jeweled covers are removed. The books themselves mean nothing. The gold wrapped around them means everything. Some monks are killed where they stand. Others are dragged away. The youngest and strongest become slaves. Valuable enough to sell. The old are left behind. The raid lasts only hours. Then, the ships are gone, vanishing back into the sea, leaving one of Christianity's holiest places in ruins. Europe is horrified. Not because monasteries had never been robbed, because nobody imagined an enemy could appear, attack, and disappear before an army even knew they existed. The sea, which had always connected kingdoms, had suddenly become a highway for thieves. The attack on Lindisfarne echoes across the continent. Chroniclers describe fiery dragons in the sky, earthquakes, terrible omens. Many believe God himself is punishing Europe. In reality, it is something far simpler. A new kind of warfare has arrived, fast, unexpected, impossible to predict. The Vikings learn an important lesson that morning. Monasteries are rich, poorly defended, easy targets. Over the following decades. They return, again and again. England, Ireland, France. The rivers of Europe become roads leading directly to treasure. What begins as one successful robbery becomes nearly 3 centuries of Viking expansion. Entire kingdoms eventually pay them protection money just to stay away, not because the Vikings were unstoppable, because one monastery proved that wealth without defense is simply an invitation. The tomb robbers who bankrupted the pharaohs. It's around 1113 BC, deep beneath the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings. The greatest treasure vault on earth lies hidden. Inside these tombs are enough gold to finance kingdoms, solid gold shrines, jewelry, statues, weapons, furniture, entire chariots dismantled and packed away for the afterlife. Every pharaoh is buried with the wealth of a lifetime. The Egyptians believe no one would ever dare disturb the dead. They are wrong. At first, the thieves are outsiders, desperate men sneaking into the valley at night. But Egypt has a problem. The empire is weakening, harvests fail, the treasury empties, workers stop getting paid, and eventually, the men hired to guard the royal tombs realize something. Nobody knows these tombs better than they do. The robberies become inside jobs. Stonemasons, guards, priests, even government officials, people trusted to protect eternity, begin selling it piece by piece. Ancient court records survive describing the investigations. One gang admits breaking through a tomb wall with bronze tools. Another confesses to stripping a pharaoh's mummy of its gold mask. They even describe cutting jewelry directly off the body. One robber calmly explains that they divided the gold equally among themselves, like merchants splitting profits, not criminals stealing from kings. The authorities try to stop them. Suspects are beaten until they confess. Trials are held, executions follow. It changes nothing. The economy is collapsing faster than justice can keep up. Eventually, the priests make an extraordinary decision. If they can't protect the pharaohs, they'll hide them secretly at night. The royal mummies are removed from their own tombs, stacked together inside hidden caches, one pharaoh beside another, kings who ruled centuries apart, sleeping shoulder to shoulder in anonymous graves, not because that was tradition, because thieves had become too successful. When archaeologists finally discovered these hidden caches thousands of years later, they realized something astonishing. Ancient Egypt had spent centuries trying to rescue its own dead from its own people. The greatest grave robbery in history wasn't committed by foreigners, it came from inside the kingdom itself. Sometimes the safest place for a king isn't inside the palace he built, it's somewhere nobody remembers looking. The treasure that vanished with the Knights Templar. It's Friday, October 13, 1307, across France. Royal soldiers knock on hundreds of doors at exactly the same time. The orders are simple: arrest every Knight Templar, take everything, leave nothing behind. By sunset, one of the richest organizations in Europe has disappeared, but its greatest treasure has vanished with it. The Knights Templar begin as warrior monks. Their job is simple: protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. Over 2 centuries, they become something far more powerful. Kings borrow money from them. Nobles store fortunes inside their castles. The Pope answers only to God. The Templars answer only to the Pope. No king controls them. No tax collector touches them. By medieval standards, they are too rich, too independent, too powerful. King Philip IV of France owes them enormous debts. Debts he has no intention of paying, so instead, he accuses them of heresy, secret rituals, false confessions, blasphemy. Most of the accusations are extracted under torture. The trials become a formality. The outcome is already decided. Royal officials storm Templar commanderies expecting unimaginable wealth: gold, silver, documents, jewels. Instead, many vaults are almost empty. The Pari, where much of the order's wealth is believed to have been stored, contains far less than expected. Some accounts suggest wagons left the city days before the arrests. Others claim ships sailed from the Templar port of La Rochelle, never to be seen again. No one knows. That mystery becomes the real treasure. For over 7 centuries, people have searched for it. Scottish castles, Portuguese monasteries, Mediterranean islands, even the Americas. Every generation produces a new theory. None produce the treasure. Perhaps there never was one great hoard. Perhaps it was quietly absorbed into other kingdoms, or perhaps, somewhere beneath forgotten stone, it still waits. History rarely leaves perfect endings. Sometimes the greatest theft is stealing certainty itself. The Persian king who stole an empire's soul. It's 330 BC, Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire. For over 2 centuries, this city has been the beating heart of the greatest empire the world has ever seen. Delegations from Egypt, Babylon, India and Central Asia walk through its gates carrying tribute: gold, ivory, silver, rare woods, precious stones. Everything eventually finds its way here. The wealth of half the known world sits inside one city. Then Alexander arrives. The battle has already been won. The Persian king Darius III is fleeing east. Persepolis cannot save itself. Its gates open. Alexander marches in. At first he acts like a conqueror. He forbids unnecessary destruction. His soldiers guard parts of the city. Everything suggests Persepolis will survive. Then something changes. Ancient writers disagree about exactly why. Some blame alcohol. Some blame revenge. Some blame a courtesan named Thais who reportedly challenged Alexander to burn the palace as revenge for Persia's earlier invasion of Greece. Whatever the reason, the decision is made. The greatest palace complex on earth will burn. Before the fires begin, the treasure leaves first. Ancient historians estimate that well over 100,000 talents of gold and silver are removed from the royal treasury. The numbers are almost impossible to imagine. Modern historians debate the exact total, but they agree on one thing: it is among the largest transfers of wealth in the ancient world. So much treasure is loaded onto pack animals that ancient sources speak of thousands of camels and mules carrying it away. The wealth of generations, walking out of Persepolis, one caravan at a time. Then the flames rise, wooden roofs collapse, magnificent halls disappear. Centuries of imperial history become ash in a single night. The Persians lose far more than gold. They lose their symbol, their capital, their confidence. An empire can survive losing a battle. It is much harder to survive watching the center of your civilization burn before your eyes. Alexander didn't just steal Persian treasure, he stole the image of Persian invincibility. Sometimes, destroying a symbol is worth more than stealing a vault. The treasure that disappeared without a trace. It's the year 70 AD. Jerusalem is under siege for months. Roman legions surround the city. Inside, famine spreads. Outside, the greatest military machine on earth waits patiently. Then the walls finally fall. The Second Temple, the spiritual heart of Judaism, is overwhelmed. Roman soldiers pour inside, the city burns, the temple burns with it. When the fighting ends, the Romans carry away everything they can: the 7-branched golden menorah, the table of the trumpets of silver, sacred vessels, objects so holy that generations had believed they would never leave Jerusalem. The celebrated across the empire. In Rome, Emperor Titus commissions a triumph. Thousands line the streets as soldiers parade the captured treasures through the city. The moment is carved forever into stone. Even today, you can stand beneath the Arch of Titus and see Roman soldiers carrying the menorah on their shoulders, one of history's greatest thefts, captured in marble. Then the trail goes cold. No one knows exactly what happened afterward. Some believe the treasures remained in Rome for centuries. Others believe they were carried away when the Vandals sacked Rome in 455. Later stories claim they reached Carthage. Others place them in Constantinople. Some legends insist they were hidden forever. Every few centuries someone claims they've found them. Every time the search ends the same way, with more questions than answers. Perhaps the treasure of the ancient world still exists somewhere. Perhaps it was melted down long ago. Perhaps history has already erased it forever. That's the strange thing about theft. Sometimes stealing an object isn't enough. Time steals the trail, until eventually the mystery becomes more valuable than the treasure itself. Look at all of them together. A pharaoh whose own guards emptied the tombs they swore to protect, crusaders who robbed the greatest Christian city on earth, scholars who watched centuries of knowledge disappear into a river, Vikings who discovered that faith without defense was just another opportunity, kings who carried away the wealth of fallen empires. Treasures that vanished so completely, people are still searching for them 1,000 years later. The greatest thefts in history were never just about gold. Gold can be mined again, cities can be rebuilt, empires can rise a second time. But some things, once stolen, are gone forever. A civilization's memory, its symbols, its confidence, its identity, that is what history's greatest thieves were really after, and in many cases they got away with it.